Welcome to In Case You Forget, a podcast for foster care caseworkers who carry more than anyone sees. If this work feels heavy and follows you home, this is a space to process, reflect, and remember why you said yes. I'm Jamie Cabe.
And I'm Jamie Finn. We're so glad you're here. Today, we're so happy to welcome our friend Jason Johnson to the show. Jason serves as the National Director of the Pure Religion Project with the Christian Alliance for Orphans, where he develops resources, coaches leaders, and teaches on church-based ministry and organizational strategy related to foster care and adoption. Shaped by years in church leadership and his own family's foster care journey, Jason cares deeply about encouraging and equipping people serving within the foster care community. He and his wife, Emily, live in Texas with their daughters. And in this episode, we'll talk with Jason about the long, often unseen nature of foster care work. We'll explore how caseworkers can stay grounded and hopeful and encouraged, even when progress feels slow and outcomes are uncertain.
Yeah, Jason, we are so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here. I love it.
I mean, this is a special one for us, right, Jamie? Because Jason's our buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Jason, Who are your two favorite Jamies in the world?
It's a great question. Well, we have shared
which
many.
One would come first?
Yeah. Oh, well. It depends on who's paying for the late night Mexican after some content.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard you refer to us as the Jamies before, and I love that.
Yeah. Even Emily, if she knows the Jamies will be at an event, it makes her want to be there all that much more.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, Jason, I do want to let our listeners know, too, that you have been on our other podcast, the Forgotten Podcast, quite a few times. In fact, episode 2, 3, 44, and 102. And you were even named a fan favorite for episode 2, which was finding the perfect time to foster or adopt. So don't get a big head.
Wow. Wait, you had like a fan favorite process?
Yeah, like we picked like the most listened to, most, engaged with. So
that was episode 2. So they probably ran that little competition after episode 3. So the options were very slim. Now there's hundreds.
Hundreds, over 300.
I thought I was episode 1. Who was episode 1?
Probably me. I was probably
just like introducing the concept.
An intro.
That's fair. Okay.
And I did not get fan favorite, Jason.
Yeah, well, I haven't either. I'm not loving this. This is a great start.
So anyways, we are so happy to have you. And we are going to talk about the long game. And just we recognize all of us here have been foster parents. All of us here are adoptive parents. We understand the long game. None of us here are foster care caseworkers, but there are some incredible principles that we're going to talk through that we all need to be grounded, to stay hopeful, to be encouraged. So before we start, Jason, or as we start rather, why does this topic even matter to you?
It matters to me for a number of reasons. First, what these kids and families need are people in it for the long haul, that relationships matter. And we know healthy relationships are committed to sticking and seeing the ups and downs through. So the obvious benefit to kids and families who are in particular need of relationships who say, we're here for you. There's nothing you can do to change that. And we're going to ride this thing out as long as we can. So that's obviously key. And then second, I think it's important for us personally. I just don't operate under the belief that we're supposed to expend ourselves and spend ourselves to the degree that we're kind of like those marathon runners every once in a while that you see that are super inspiring, but also kind of makes you look at it and go, not interested. There's nothing about what I'm watching right now that makes me want to go run a marathon, as they drag kind of their lifeless limbs across the finish line. on one hand inspiring, but on another hand, it creates a bit of a distance. Like, that's not me at all. I actually think what God has for us is, no, I want you to cross the finish line flourishing and healthy and thriving, and that comes from a place of what are we believing through this? How are we thinking through this? What are we telling ourselves is true, even when it's hard to remember that because we're not necessarily seeing that play out. So the benefit of those we're serving, but also to the benefit of those who are doing the serving.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a space where immediate results are not really the fruit that we're going for. It's not what's happening. Can you speak to how just the small, consistent, faithful actions actually bring the lasting impact?
I mean, we're in the middle of this, so this is not, hey, we figured this out, and we did some small things consistently over time, and now we have arrived. I'm not sure where we've arrived actually, but we are in the midst of, okay, this is the pattern that we're going to set. These are the things that we're going to commit to, how we're going to do certain things, not do certain things, in hopes that it produces fruit. And, I work with a guy who has reminded our team often that in the work of justice and mercy, results will often feel slow and underwhelming. And it's just a good kind of tempered reality for a couple of reasons. First, to not get so kind of hyperactive and caught up in I want to produce results quickly. We live in a world that says, if you're unable to produce results quickly, it's probably an indicator that you're doing something wrong. It's not working. You're not successful. And so it's very easy for us to measure ourselves up against that grading system and feel like we're not doing anything. And whatever we are doing, it's not working, and we feel like failures. It's also a helpful reminder because when it does feel slow and underwhelming, it's not such a shock. We go, gosh, it just feels slow and underwhelming now. But you know what? That's it. That's like the name of the game in this. So I think what we have to do, it's a complete reframing of the way that we think. And it's easy to forget this, that we don't measure results. We don't measure progress. We don't measure impact. We don't even measure ourselves up against the normal standards and systems of measurement that are all around us in our schools, our businesses, our society. It's an entirely different game, an entirely different field that we're playing on.
Yeah, and maybe especially difficult for the kind of people who choose to jump into it. Like you said, the
Problem
work
solvers.
of justice and
Yeah.
mercy. Yeah, like we
Yeah.
see injustice, and it's like the justice should come quickly, and we should be fighting for it. And there's these like battle cry kind of reactions where the slow and steady is not really what comes naturally to often the people who join that cause.
It's a recipe for disaster, actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like the profile of the kind of people who get involved
Yeah,
in this
exactly.
immediately hit this brick wall that they feel, because it's like we're the exact wrong type of people
Yeah.
to be doing this, but also the exact right type of people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's so much in life we cannot control, and especially when we're thinking of caseworkers, they have this tension of they're actually in the middle of a process that is they're getting decisions made by other people. They have to then share and implement those decisions with the people impacted when they have no control over those decisions. And there's such a tension between it's like, I want to have what you're saying. I want to have the patience and I want to not think of these external outcomes. And yet, in this work, there are also outcomes that are being measured that they are responsible for, like in the court systems. Like maybe speak to that tension and some ways they can, I mean, we can only control what we can control, but
Yeah.
how do you do that when you feel like everything is out of your control?
Obviously, I've never been in that position, but I simply can't imagine just all the complexities that they have to deal with in that role, because they're in between a space of not only supervisors in their own offices, but even lawmakers in some room somewhere, all trickling all the way down. And then they're also in the living room of people's homes. Like what a crazy turn of events that they're having to deal with. And then somehow having to go home at the end of the day and sleep well. So how do we do that? I frankly, and I know this might sound like an easy theological kind of cop out, but genuinely, I was confronted with this years ago when we started in this process and navigating the dynamics of I can't control the court's decisions. I can't control some decisions that I feel like are way outside of the bounds of what's in the best interest of this kid. Um, what I can control is what I believe and how I'm going to respond to it. And here's where I had to land. And I know it sounds maybe a little cliche, but for those who are in the deepness of this work, you'll get it. I just don't know how you don't fall on the sovereignty of God over all things in this process. Because if he's not sovereign over all of this, then I don't know how any of it is okay or how we sleep well at night at all. And I don't claim to know or be able to explain how is God sovereign over what seems to be and what very much feels like and looks like a really bad decision. I choose to believe in a God who is sovereign over bad decisions rather than one where bad decisions are outside of his capacity
Happening to him.
to do good things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I've got to choose one, I'm choosing to believe in the God that says, hey, this was a bad decision.
Yeah, I think that we often look for like tools and tricks and methods. And so often it comes back to what are we believing? What are we telling ourselves? What are we remembering as we lay in bed? Can you speak to just the idea of paying attention to what we pay attention to? Because when we're talking about beliefs, it's not as simple as, okay, I believe this. It's, okay, how do we hold on to those beliefs when what we're seeing with our eyes is not, it's not what we're seeing?
Many can relate to this concept that what we pay attention to doubles back on us. The things that we're most familiar with or that we're most concerned with in the moment, we notice them more. So if you have a blemish on your face, you look in the mirror, that's the first thing that your eyes go to because that's the
You can
thing I'm
tell
most
you live
concerned.
with teenage girls.
I live
Yeah.
with 5 females. That's right. Yeah, I'm very well acquainted with all of that.
Yeah.
If you buy a red car, suddenly you see all the red cars. You wear a shirt that's a color you don't normally wear, and you walk in the room and feel a little self-conscious. You see all the other shirts in from that color, and so what we pay attention to doubles back on us, and that also is true about what we believe and what we tell ourselves. And what we also know, if you're involved in this space, is issues of trauma. And we're all little miniature neuroscientists, some of us more than others. And so we all kind of understand the dynamics of the brain and the brain's capacity to be transformed. And scripturally, it says that the brain has the capacity to be renewed. We have to renew our minds. How do we do that? I think any neuroscientist would say at a very human, practical level, but also a theologian would say at a very spiritual level, it all comes down to what we pay attention to and the repeated actions over time. If you've lived where you've lived long enough, you could probably drive home without thinking about it because it's so ingrained. You've done it so many times. So what that does is act as an anchor that either drowns us or it keeps us steady. Uh, and if at the end of the day, we're ending the day by paying attention to things that are false, that this is out, God, he's not in control of this. And this is all, it's all going to pot and like, it's not going to work and it's all going to be awful. Those things will double back on us. And this isn't the power of positive thinking. It's the power of transformational thinking. And we all know, especially caseworkers who are navigating this dual reality of decisions that are made that they have to enforce, but also They're in the living rooms of real humans and it's sometimes the gap between those two is hard. So you get it. You have to end the day not just thinking positively. That doesn't get you very far, but actually thinking transformationally. You know what? There were some beautiful things today and some hard things today, but here's what I'm choosing to regularly believe: that God has a capacity to turn really, really hard things into really, really beautiful things. And I actually believe that the vast majority of people who are involved in this work, and even in the social care work, somewhere deep inside of them is that belief. That there is some element of that belief that drove them into this. This is a broken system. Many even have some personal experience with this that drove them in, their own stories of those they knew. Something compelled them into this. And I think somewhere interwoven in all of that motivation is a belief that restoration can happen and beautiful things can come out of really broken things. And it's easy to forget that. But we have to keep telling ourselves that, just like we keep driving home to the same house every day. And then eventually it just becomes the way that we think and what we do.
You're talking about, or it's bringing up for me, the power of like healthy rhythms,
Mm,
or habits that we place into our life. And I don't remember who said this statement, but this idea of we overestimate what can happen in a year, but we underestimate what can happen in 5. And I think that kind of speaks to, like, in personally, there are a few things every single day that I am focused on: eating, food, steps, that kind of stuff. And I just recognized one is that I don't sleep with my phone in my room. And I used to do that all the time, and in fact, I would also listen to a show to fall asleep because my mind
mm.
was spinning and I had trouble sleeping, and I just started to feel convicted about that was not healthy for me. And so every day, little by little, it's just like, am I doing this? And then I report on it to accountability, and then I check it off, yes or no, if I did it. And I just realized yesterday I've been doing that since January 2nd. And all of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, we're months into this. When I first stopped having my phone in my room, it felt like detox. Like I felt like I need to listen to how can I sleep? And it was like, wow, that has controlled you. And so that's a long way around this next question. But are there some, like, I'm just thinking about that for our workers. What are some habits maybe they can cultivate? What's the key things they need to be thinking through in this area?
We've talked some about it already, just the importance of what we are putting into our minds and what we're paying attention to. And so I think that does involve, what are we listening to? What are we watching? And I'm not saying like is that appropriate?
Right.
Is what
Sure.
you're
Mhm.
listening to appropriate? Although
Right.
that's a conversation. But
Yeah.
even more than that, just how much
Yeah.
input and
Yeah. Right.
noise and what we are not at a loss for is things to pay attention to. As a matter of fact, everything on our phone is uniquely designed to capture more of our attention. So we're never going to be at a loss for that. So we're going to have to make the decision to say, I'm going to minimize and turn off as much as I can all the noise around me. And I'm going to make decisions to help me do that, like not have my phone in my room. Or for me, the last couple of years, I found I can't control a lot of it. Even before we jumped on this podcast, it's like, do not disturb, silence, shut everything up. And then somehow my 14-year-old is still able to break through it all. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but they hack everything. And I learned a couple of years ago, I can't control a lot of what's coming at me every day, but there are spaces that I can control. For example, driving in my car alone, when I'm alone in my car, I've just turned off all the podcasts and all the stuff. And I like listening and learning from people, but it feels like a loss at first. But over time, you find pruning that and removing that has actually brought about greater gain. Just if it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes in the car, an hour of just silence, and it's a gift. Or so making decisions about what we put on our mind, making decisions about how we use our bodies, that we're moving, we're being physically active. The studies that show even walking, even maybe deciding as much as I can when I'm on a phone call, I'm going to stand or walk and do that. I don't have to be tied down to a desk or, I'm just going to walk more, just be more physically active. What we're allowing into our hearts, like our seed of passion, what we're constantly pouring out, especially those in the social work field. And what are those things that you love to do that you hardly ever get to do anymore? And you find when I do these things, gosh, it's like I just feel filled and it's life giving. I've asked this question in hundreds of different places, and the answers I get from people are fascinating. I was at a men's retreat not long ago with a bunch of foster dads, and one guy said, I love to draw and I never get to draw anymore. And a lot of these guys knew him. They're like, we've known you for years. We didn't know you could draw. And by the end of the weekend, he had spent time drawing, and the stuff that he drew was incredible. And these guys were just shocked. I've known you for years. I had no idea you could do this. So what are those things you love to do that are life-giving to you, and how can you create space and margin to do those? And then tending to our soul, just spending time with the Lord, and it doesn't have to be regimented or prescriptive. But what are those spaces and those places that help you feel connected to God and that your soul is being refreshed? So I tend to kind of focus on our minds, our bodies, our hearts, and then our souls, and making decisions about how we're going to prioritize simple things that we can do consistently over time that bring life and flourishing and health into those four categories.
A little bit counterintuitive. Like when we're talking about going and doing good work, the idea that part of what will sustain us to keep doing it is to do other things that bring life in those spaces. But I think it's a huge part of the conversation that we're not just talking about like, how do you show up at work? How do you keep, but like, no, who are you outside of that space that fuels you for that and keeps you in it for the long haul?
That's right. And I think you just brought up a great point, is who are you? That issue, that question of identity. Am I what I do for this work? Is my identity wrapped up in this work of justice or mercy or social work? And if so, if my identity is wrapped up in that, then my value is wrapped up in my capacity to produce outcomes and boy, that's a slippery slope. And every once in a while, this may be a stretch of a connection, but maybe a lot of listeners will understand. With one of ours in particular, one of our kiddos, she'll eventually do the thing that we ask often, but after several steps of escalating defiance and aggression and yelling, and then she'll eventually do the thing. And then when we circle back around and say, "Hey, when we ask you to do something, we just need you to do," I did it. What are you talking about? I did it. Yeah, you did it. About an hour later, and a whole lot of stuff in between there, right? The point is not that you just eventually do it. The point is also how you do it and how you go about doing it. And I think what's important for us in this work of we want to solve problems and fix it and justice and mercy and da 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 da. I just don't think that we get to the end of our days on this and we've lost ourselves. We are dragging our lifeless limbs across the finish line. We've lost our relationships. We've neglected our family. We've neglected our souls and our health. And then we say to God and others, "But look, I did it. I did the thing." And it's like, yeah, you did, but man, like the journey there is not really how it's supposed to be, right? So it does sound selfish. It does sound counterintuitive, but I think the best thing that we can do for anybody that we're serving in this space is make sure that we're healthy. And that's actually, for the long haul, one of the greatest gifts that we can give those that we're serving: a healthy, regulated, stable, consistent version of ourselves.
Yeah. And as much as it might seem like a caricature of the like, dragging our lifeless limbs across the finish
I
line.
know that's a little aggressive. And all the marathon
No,
runners are going to be like, Jason, you have no, That's not what it's like. You're just jealous. And I am a little jealous.
No,
Yeah.
I want to affirm what you're saying, because the CAFO sort of narrative here has been transformative for me, because I actually kind of believed, I wouldn't have said that, but that is what God wants for me, that I'm like burning up my life for him and taking up my cross and running the race. And that was very real to me, that like, you only have one life, so you better spend it up. And this idea that we're spending it up, but we're doing it from a place of intimacy with him, that we're doing it from a place of peace and joy and rest, and there isn't striving and stress, and that we're reflecting him as we do it. I think it's actually really going to serve people who would never say, yeah, my goal is to drag my lifeless limbs, but who actually kind of believe that that's what God wants. He wants all of us, which means that we better show up completely exhausted.
We are going to be tired. We are going to be spent. And we have a decision to make. Am I going to be tired and spent by giving myself over to things that matter and are producing life and flourishing? Or am I going to be tired and spent because I've exhausted myself and neglected myself? One of them leads to I'm tired and spent and I feel empty. The other one leads to I'm tired and spent and I feel fulfilled.
That's good. Yep.
And I think for many, we may look around and say, so much of my time and energy and focus and identity is wrapped up in the work that I'm doing. And my marriage is unhealthy. My family is unstable. There's so many things that I need to be tending to, but I'm not, because I'm so wrapped up and defined by this. And I'd say, yeah, you're going to end at some point exhausted and empty. And the goal is not to not be exhausted or to not be tired and not give yourself over. It's I want to feel that at the end of each day, but feel like, yeah, gosh, you know what? I didn't see much results today, but I'm trusting that I was faithful to what God asked me to do, that I sow the seed, he causes the thing to grow. My success is not determined by the outcomes I can produce. It's determined by, was I faithful today to give what God asked of me today? Great, good. Man, I'm tired at the end of the day, but man, that feels good to know that. And now I can sleep okay, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and do it again.
Let's talk about the importance of having people who know you in your life, who can speak truth. Sometimes when we're running the race, we don't have that 30,000-foot view because we're just in it, right? I know my husband is very good at seeing things I don't see at times, and having discernment in ways I wouldn't have the same discernment. But maybe just speak to the importance of having trusted people in your life who also kind of call you out in a loving way when you're not seeing it and you're just kind of in that rat race.
It's a hard one, because, and I think maybe we've even talked about this before. It's like, well, I'm afraid of, once I'm found out, then it's over because they found me out, And the imposter syndrome thing is real. And a couple of things. Every time I'm asked a question about this or I'm in a conversation about this, my mind always goes back to the moment in the Garden of Gethsemane before the time that we mostly focus on, which is the encounter with the soldiers and Jesus being arrested. The night before that, Jesus tells his disciples, I'm going to go spend some time with the Father, and I need you guys to stay here and stay awake. And essentially what he's telling them to do is, this is what I need to go do, but I can't do that in a vacuum. I need you to be with me in this. I don't need you to do what I'm doing. I just need you to be with me in this. And then he comes back and he finds them asleep and he's like, wake up. Like, I need to do the things I need to do, but I need your help to facilitate an environment in which I can do that. And so I think that's important. That's number one, is who are we inviting to stand guard around us? And I would say, if you are married, that first person is your spouse. I can't live daily rhythms and live according to certain patterns and make decisions in a vacuum from my spouse, right? Like, we stand guard for each other and we have to create space for each other. I'm going to create space for you to be healthy and do the things that you need to do. And you're going to do the same for me. And then there's going to be those where we do those together, obviously. But also, whether you're married or not, finding who are those other people around you. For me, it's mostly the guys I work with. And they know me and they know my tendencies, and they're able to say, you seem off, or they even model for me what it means to come back and say, hey, I may have come across in this meeting a certain way and I certainly didn't intend to, or hey, I feel like, I was a little short there. And so that's the mutuality that we've built and that trust. So I would say the first is, you can't do this in isolation. Who are those people that you need to bring in on and say, hey, here's some decisions I'm making about the way I want to orient and rhythm my life. And I need your help, not just to hold me accountable to that necessarily, but to help create space for me to do that. And then those are going to be the people who you've given the license to speak in and say, hey, we're here holding space for you, but we're not seeing you in this moment. Steward it well. And I think it's also that they have the license to celebrate and say, hey, here's what we see, how you're growing and the decisions you're making. And it's awesome. And it's so cool that we get to be a front row seat to this. So I always go back to that. And I would say start there, is who are those people you need to gather around you? And if you're married, these are great conversations to have as a couple. I mean, even, Jamie, back to your point about, I'm not going to have my phone next to me while I sleep anymore. Probably you had a conversation with Clint about that, right? It wasn't just you decided on your own. And then, 3 weeks later, Clint's like, hey, I've noticed you haven't had your phone by your bed lately. Tell me about that. Like, no, like, you probably talked about it. And then you had to make accommodations for, okay, what if there's an emergency in the middle of the night? I don't have my phone. So are you in on this with me, so that we've got a plan in place? We can't make these decisions in a vacuum.
So as we start to come to an end, I would love if you could talk about the long game in light of like the long, long game, like that God is not slow as we consider that we're just talking about a different timeline, a different even reality of just our earthly day-to-day sowing seeds. And can you speak to that piece of the long, long game?
Most of what we see, especially in the New Testament, about what we can anticipate to come has very little to do with what we can anticipate to come here on this earth in
Yeah,
this life.
that's right.
Most of it is speaking to, there is a day coming that is entirely different than the day that we're in now. And we might not ever see uh, so many of these things on this side of that day that's to come. Even famous coffee cup old school bumper sticker verses like, God works everything for the good of those who love him. Well, yeah, but the context of what Paul is writing in is he's talking about eternity. He's talking about, no, God might not actually work everything out here in this life. But what he has guaranteed is that it's all going to get worked out. And I think what that does is it gives us a steadiness here in the moment. We're not driven by urgency or franticness. The occasion where a woman comes in and breaks an expensive jar of perfume on Jesus's feet, and his disciples kind of posture up and say, "Ugh, how dare she? We could have sold that and fed the poor." And you almost get this sense in which Jesus is saying, like, hey, guys, we're not going to play that game, guys. Like, we're not going to do that. What she did was beautiful, and it was lavish, and it was extravagant, and it was beautiful. We're not going to play the game of, oh, but the need is urgent. And what could, and he says, the poor will always be with you. So why is that important? Because it's a slippery slope. You go, oh, how dare you spend money on vacation? You could have given that money to the poor. So I think Jesus is like, no, we're not going to think like that. We're not going to be driven by urgency and crisis and freneticness. We're going to be measured, and we're going to operate at the rhythm of and at the pace of there is a day coming in which everything that's wrong will be made right. And I'm going to operate today on Wednesday according to that pace. And I think a couple of things happen. It allows us to be reminded what God expects of me today is not to solve the problems, all the problems by tomorrow. It's to be faithful today. And it gives me the capacity to not be afraid of tomorrow, because I know that I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen next week. But what I do know is that somehow God is sovereign over all of it, and he's working it all out to the degree that one day everything that's wrong will be made right. And that's the game that I get to play in. That's pretty remarkable. And it goes all the way down to even in our own homes. This issue of like forecasting. If we don't solve this problem now,
Yeah.
10:30 p.m. on Wednesday night when we're all exhausted, if we don't solve this now, then she's gonna grow up and be a gang leader in prison. Like, whoa. You're forecasting a little too much, and it's driving situational urgency that's just not healthy. It's not needed. It's not helpful. So operating at a pace of I'm participating in the long game, and it's going to be slow. It's going to feel underwhelming at times. I'm going to have to preach what's true to myself to keep myself in the game. I'm going to have to stay healthy and go on walks and exercise and eat good food and not sleep with the phone by my bed if that's necessary, and turn it all off in the car to keep myself healthy, because I'm playing the long game here. I'm not trying to solve every problem on Monday by Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Jason, so good. And we're so thankful for you. So glad you're our friend. And thanks for being on today and for sharing
Yeah.
with our listeners. This was
Super
good,
fun
a good
hanging
time.
out with the Jamies. And
Yeah.
I love that you guys are doing this. So thanks for allowing me to be a part.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
your wisdom, I think, is really going to serve everyone. So grateful.
If this episode reminded you that you are not alone in this work, share it with another foster care caseworker who may need to hear it. And remember, your work matters, and so do you.
Resonate.